Especially. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Up Against the Brick Wall with the Men's Development Institute. We're here this week to be discussing male body image and pop culture. But first, let's get some announcements for the upcoming week. So Monday, Institute for Women's Leadership is having their event called Ally and Me in Gretzky 120 at 6 p.m. Tuesday, Peace Corps will be tabling on both campuses in Gretzky from 10 to 12:30 and in Sexton from 1 to 3. Wednesday, Wellness Fest is in Upper Gretzky from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And don't forget to come visit MDI and IWL, please. Also, it will be Walk-In Wednesday in both campuses and health centers. With that, we'll get into our discussion. I'm today's panel host, Kirk Harrington. I'm the programming coordinator here for Men's Development Institute. Also, I'm here with Taylor Carlson. He is our student director, Lincoln Mullings, our institutional advancement coordinator, and Derek Cutter, our public relations coordinator. So guys, 95% of young men report being dissatisfied with their body image, according to a recent study conducted by professors at Notre Dame of Maryland. My question is, if we're going to dive right into it, how do we think pop culture contributes to dissatisfaction with male body image, here on campus especially?
Well, I think pop culture, and even on campus, it sends a lot of messages, whether we acknowledge them or don't even recognize them, that there's constantly a message being sent to men and to women. But we talk about it with women a lot more. But everywhere you look today, whether it's on a or men's health magazine or in movie trailers or, just scrolling through Facebook, there are the people who you know have the ideal body image and you know there are people who don't, right? And so where does that ideal come from? And a lot of it comes from pop culture. The messages we receive through movies, through TV shows, through everything that we really consume on a daily basis. It tells us what's right and what's wrong, especially when it comes to body image, especially for men.
Yeah, an interesting fact that I ran into researching this topic was that if G.I. Joe, the action figure, were blown up to human size, he would be taller than the average man in America and would have bigger biceps than a bodybuilder. And those are the sorts of images that we surround ourselves with. Those are the sorts of images that we pick up as kids when we're playing with G.I. Joes. The same thing is true about Ken dolls for Barbies. All these action figures promote, unrealistic images for kids. And those are things we play with at a very young age. So I think that you could say that has a huge effect on people.
Absolutely.
I completely agree because, sometimes we look at them inside their boxes in the toy stores and we think, how big of an impact they can have. But where I really think it lies is in the movies, in the cartoons, where you see Captain America coming in and he's saving the beautiful, attractive woman and you're thinking, okay, that guy who looks that way gets all these things. He gets the respect, he gets the women, he gets the success. And for me to have all of that, I need to look a certain way. I think that's where it kind of sets those expectations that people feel so pressured to meet.
Right. Well, and to add to that, if you look at the progressions of superheroes throughout time, like if you look at the live action Batman characters or the live action Superman characters, and you look at the way they've progressed over time, they've become taller, they've become more fit, they become more muscular and more ripped. Their costumes highlight that more. And another thing Lincoln and I noticed is that most people who play Superman are above 30. Young men are looking at that as a body image goal of other men who are, far more developed and advanced than we are. And that creates an unrealistic goal.
Yeah. So my question, we're all used to seeing that. Obviously, something we've grown up seeing, kind of been used to. It's not something talked about as much as you mentioned, with the awesome women's movement going on that we are all supporting here. But my question is, guys, as for here on campus, what pressure or demoralizing behaviors are you seeing here on campus, in regard, how are people our age pressured through these tactics that are kind of been institutionalized in our society to make us feel that we have the wrong body image? Why are we dissatisfied? here on campus, what are we seeing?
Well, I think St. John's and St. Ben's are big sports culture schools, right? And there's nothing against the sports culture. I came in and I played basketball for a semester, so I was part of that sports culture. And I think something that's dangerous about that sports culture is that you see the success and the fame and the popularity that a lot of the athletes on campus getting kind of notoriety. And a lot of them are very in shape, very good-looking people. And so you want that. You naturally want to be successful. You naturally want to chase things that make other people noticeable, right? There are very few reasons to not desire that. But when it becomes dangerous, especially is when you go beyond the healthy circumstance, when you're pushing your body past what it was built to do. I mean, there are certain things that I'll be able to do and also not do because of my genetic makeup. We talk a lot about professional sports athletes. I could never, even as much protein as I ate, even if I take steroids, I would not be able to play defensive line for the New England Patriots or even the Minnesota Vikings, right? For all you Minnesota Viking fans out there. But that's because I'm built a certain way. And so there are certain limitations and there's certain things that I can do that are within my body type. And so I think a lot of times we get mixed up between wanting what other people have, but also confusing that with what we're capable of doing ourselves. And so I think a lot of it revolves around, who's notable on campus, and especially with athletes being notable, a lot of people feel dissatisfied because those people are notable with, who are athletic and who work out all the time and who are ripped and stuff like that. And so it's hard not to want that and feel those pressures.
Yeah, I think another issue that kind of arises with the athlete culture that we tend to have is protein shake culture as well. Protein shakes are not necessarily bad in themselves, but a lot of people just pick the protein shake with the highest protein content. Or, they go down to their local GNC and they assume every protein shake there must be healthy for them. But that's just not true. I was reading an article the other day, I believe in The Atlantic, and it discussed how these protein shakes can actually have worse effects for you than even steroids can. And steroids themselves are another issue that maybe we don't see on our campus necessarily, but is active in young men our age, young college-aged men. I believe it's something like 90% of steroids are used for personal use, not for professional gain. And so that falls a lot into young men in our age category, young men whose brains are still developing too.
Well, and steroids, I mean, especially with extensive use, can be linked to depression, to higher aggression rates, to higher suicide rates, which we already know men struggle with in general. But going back to your point about, what are healthy supplements to take? I mean, 95% of college men are dissatisfied in some way with their body. I mean, I fall into that category for sure. Like, there are plenty of days where I'm just like, oh, I need to put on more muscle. Oh, there are days I need to look better, right? I mean, I think that's a very human experience, something that we all can relate to in some way.
I think it's absolutely true. It's something that we all can relate to. I guess my next question is then for you guys is, if it's something so common here on campus, why is it something that's talked about? If 95% of students here on campus are dissatisfied with their body image, then why is it something that isn't brought up, that we don't hear talked about enough to feel more comfortable talking about it? Because obviously it's something that's not comfortable to talk about if we're not talking about it. What's the issue here with that?
I think because everyone has an issue, it has become normalized. In most cases, it's normal to feel that, maybe I can put on some more weight. I can lose some more. Maybe everyone knows that I cannot look like Idris Elba, but of course, I'm going to work towards it. It's a goal. It's an expectation. It's something that you want. But because so many people deal with it and it's such a common issue, since it's everyone's issue, it's no one's issue to deal with. It's no one's issue to handle. And no one feels to feel compelled to actually fix the issue, because we all face it. And if we all face it, it becomes a normal part of our lives.
I think that's part of it. I also think that it can be hard for men to feel like they're able to talk about their feelings or their dissatisfactions with their body. I feel like that old phrase, or that phrase that like a lot of people use with their buddies, like, oh, mama ain't raised no bitch, or don't be a bitch, something like that, man up, those sorts of terms. A lot of times we use them as jokes, but I think they still kind of create a culture around them that men don't share their feelings. Men don't become vulnerable around one another. So on one hand, I think that people that realize it's so widespread, it has become normalized, but the people who don't realize that it's so widespread feel as though they're the only ones, and that they're not allowed to talk to anyone about it, which is equally unfortunate, I think.
Do you think there's a quick solution to those people that feel as though they have realized, as you were talking about, and like are aware of these things? Is there a way for those people to healthily promote a way of doing this? I guess what I'm asking here is, in our culture, sometimes vulnerability is portrayed as a weakness. I'm asking, is there a way for us to help promote the idea that vulnerability is actually something that's a strength, a skill, actually we can be working at constantly?
I think it's changed your perspective on it. Looking at vulnerability instead of being a weakness, look at it as a strength. It's hard to sit down and open up and talk about your feelings. Look at it as something that people can benefit from. If I share my story with you, you feel inspired to share it with me, and we understand that from man to man, we can relate to each other and spring each other up and uplift each other and be empowered in one way, rather than saying, you know what, he's already strong. You know, looking at him and saying that he has no issues, he's perfect, I'm the one with all the problems. Not realizing that we all are individuals with our own struggles and our own issues that we have to battle with.
Well, I think a lot of it comes to is like when you feel vulnerable, you feel like you failed. You know, you feel like I can't get the perfect body type, or I can't do certain things. And there's a great quote by President Roosevelt that, you know, it's not the critic that matters, it's the man in the ring who's daring greatly, who's trying to be vulnerable, to trying to reach where he wants to go, to try to be his best self. And I think that's the hardest part, is because when you're vulnerable, you're open to criticism. You're open to people rejecting you. You're open to people not accepting you for who you are. And that's the hardest risk to take, I think, especially for men. I mean, there's not a lot of times where I go home and I'm like talking with my roommate, like, look, I just don't feel confident in my body, you know, because that's a huge opportunity for him to rip into me. And I know he wouldn't, because that's, you know, not why we're friends. That's not why we're roommates. But there's still kind of a gap where guys just don't talk about it. And not to say you have to talk about it all the time, or every problem you have to bring it to someone outside of you, but the ability to realize that men all over the place are struggling with very similar issues, it's important to realize that you can go to them.
And I think for men who are just starting to share their feelings, or are listening to someone else who's sharing their feelings, sometimes you can feel awkward in that situation. You don't know how to respond to it. Because, again, as a society, we don't promote men conversing about their feelings or talking about that, being open like that. So a big important part of that is not shutting yourself off to others. It can be hard and awkward to start that conversation, to really open up to another person, but once you're able to start pushing past that, you find the people you're able to be open and vulnerable with, I think that can be a really healthy and freeing experience for anybody, men and women. But I think that a lot of men are seriously missing out on that aspect of their experience here at college.
I think that's really important, because that is the question. Do we as men have the tools to converse, to open up, to be vulnerable? I mean, men are conditioned in sports to be aggressive, to be strong, to be resilient. But do we give them the tools they need to handle and grapple with these type of issues that you can't hold on to? You can grab a football. You can, dust the dirt off your knees. But I mean, can you really hold on to the issue of body image and say, this is the issue and I'm going to deal with it?
Mm-hmm. And I think until we start trying to make those efforts, we won't know. And we won't know how to go about doing it either until we start to actually begin the process of opening up to one another. And like you're saying, trying to grow, trying to hear each other.
I think that's our number one responsibility here. It's like you were just saying, our number one, as long as you can look at yourself at the end of the day and say, was I the best me that I could be today? And I mean, obviously that's a goal. It's something that we're shooting for, that we're like reaching for. You're not actually trying to be the best you that's impossible, but you should be able to be proud of who you've been, and we're growing up, guys. We're college students here, so we should be growing and learning these lessons and talking about them, finding time to find somebody to use, for an outlet of this type of like emotion is important. My question is another topic, another thing we're gonna get into here, and maybe another means possibly of getting those feelings out and talking about these things when we need to, is with significant others. Do you guys think that here on campus, the whole hookup culture that we're dealing with, being college students here, has a relation to our desired body image, that idealistic body image that we're trying to kind of deconstruct here?
Well, kind of going back to Lincoln's point about Captain America, and in spy movies and superhero movies all the time, there's always the knight in shining armor who gets the girl, right? And that's a message that's spread across the culture that we've been raised in. And I think when you see that notoriety, and you can relate that to campus, whether it be athletes or just people who have more notoriety on campus, who hold more of a well-known name, I guess you could say, it's like you kind of want what they want. And so, whether hookup culture influences it or not, I think there's definitely a desire to feel wanted and to feel desired and to feel that people care about you. And pop culture definitely sends the message that you got to have X, Y, and Z for people to care about you. You got to have X, Y, and Z to win the game, right? And if you don't, well, try to get it. And I think that's a really dangerous game to play, one in terms of your own personal relationship and in your relationship with significant others.
Yeah, and to add to that, I do think that the hookup culture is largely based on body image. I think that hookup cultures in general are very reliant upon people being physically attracted to one another. That's the point of it.
We gotta think of Tinder. It's just photos.
Yeah, exactly.
Quick caption.
And so when you've got a culture that is based on finding partnership through appearance, it's going to build that. And you look at, if you want to look at our hookup culture specifically, like think about like things like Instagram pages like St. Joe jerseys. How many people wear jerseys out to town trying to get girls? You know, that's what guys do a lot of times at our campus, and that's because we're trying to draw towards that athlete image, I think. That's part of it, you know. Yeah. Trying to draw and say, hey, look, I'm into sports, I'm athletic, I'm masculine. You know, these are the things, and then we attach that to those body image things, and if we're not getting girls, it must be because of our body image, and I think that can be a very dangerous cycle that maybe not everybody falls into, but certainly some people do.
A lot of people do, obviously. The good news is that here on campus in Minnesota, we have this freezing cold weather, so we got to worry about it for half the season, you know what I'm saying? Well, I guess, guys, an important message that we got to be taken out of this end, obviously, is that with the little campus we have here in the close quarters we're getting used to, and people feel this on all campuses, obviously, in places like dorms and stuff, that we find people to keep drawing on the word, to confide within, and really like speak with and get personal with and open up with. Being vulnerable is important. We're all learning these lessons as we go on through life, but that's what we're here talking about it. Am I right? Like this is an opportunity for us to engage this conversation and be talking about this, talk about issues that aren't always comfortably talked about, and bring to light that like you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be who you are, and no one knows that better than you. So really, the criticisms of others, we don't have time for them, guys. We're all growing. We're gonna be developing as men. But what do you want to say?
I think that what you're talking about as far as finding somebody to confide in, that's really important. Like the other day I was at lunch with a friend and like we talked about our families, we talked about all these experiences we'd shared. And those are things that a lot of times men are not encouraged to share. Those are not emotions that men are encouraged to show. You know, those fears of this is what I'm facing, this is what my family's faced, like am I gonna go through that? You know, those were kind of the fears that we were addressing. I feel like that's kind of, that's hard to do with men, but you know, I think that once you're able to find those people, that's something that's really important. That's something to identify. And also I think it's important to show appreciation for those connections. You know, if you've got a friend that you've got that sort of a connection with, that you're able to be that open with, being able to show them and express to them how important that is to you, I think is really important as well. Because it shows that person, you know, hey, being vulnerable with you, that's something that's important to me. And, you know, I think that as men, if we're trying to encourage that more, that we need to show that sort of appreciation for one another.
Absolutely the case, guys. I'm thankful for this discussion today. Obviously, we're talking about these important issues. We're going to be digging into deeper ones. Against the brick wall, we're going to be facing these issues, hopefully bringing some people on, talking about them, and getting some more opinion and perspective here on campus. That's basically all we're going to be able to get to today, guys. Thanks for the discussion. We're going to ask that viewers, please be looking out for your email. There's lots of events and awesome things going on campus. It's important that we're all, you know, reading those and getting to them. Maybe go to something you wouldn't have gone to otherwise. Extend yourself out there in the community next week, please, guys. And also be looking out for upcoming podcasts, because we're going to be, like I said, bringing different people on, hopefully, and talking about more issues and growing, as we said. You know, that's what we're talking about today, just growing, you know. Please be comfortable with your body image, everybody. You are who you were made to be, and your only responsibility is to be the best person that you can be. So with that, I think we're going to wrap it up, guys. Thank you for this discussion. We're going to get better. We're going to keep on talking about these things and having a good time. So with that, Men's Development Institute out.